The drug crisis is a general term referring to the recent and rapid increase in the use of prescription and non-prescription drugs in the United States. This increase has led to an escalation of anti-drug and rehabilitation programs. Our objective with this project is to demonstrate both geographically and socially how communities and impoverished people are affected by the drug crisis. The drug crisis relates to geography through the outmigration of affluent residents to more rural areas, causing a disparity between high and low-income urban dwellers, leading to a higher incidence of drug use. As a result of Detroit, Michigan's bankruptcy and subsequent outmigration of higher-income residents, an ever-widening income rift, and its relation to race, has increased the number of opioid dependents within the city. As can be expected, opioid addiction prevails disproportionately within lower-income households. Similarly, in Chicago, Illinois, the movement of high-income residents to the Lakeshore Drive area has left little funds to the inner city, causing them to be more susceptible to the lure of drugs. In neighboring Windsor, Canada, which has not seen the kind of economic collapse and outmigration that Detroit has, the prevalence of drug dependence is dramatically decreased. Secondly, a majority of Adderall users are concentrated in high-density, generally affluent college towns. A recent study has shown that Adderall users tend to reside in high-density clusters. The high population density of students within a college town, Tallahassee for example, adds to the incidence of Adderall usage within the area. Colleges with higher academic standards and, in turn, higher levels of stress and competition lead to the massive spike in the usage of stimulants like Adderall. The aforementioned study shows that the highest use cluster is the Northeast region of the United States, which can be tied to the number of prestigious academic institutions within the area. Finally, in the city of Miami, higher rates of capital inflow from wealthier residents has led to the partitioning of the greater Miami area into the highly segregated areas. The differing income levels of these districts have some residents living lavishly while others descend further into poverty and drug use. Miami is one of the country's fastest growing cities, and its vast population of the world's elites is what has led to the current income inequality within the city's districts. The faster growing and richer districts are what led the other districts to higher drug use, overdose, and crime.
The drug crisis affects minorities by making them more susceptible to criminal charges due to the racialization by law enforcement. An example of this unfair racialized law enforcement is in San Francisco. Currently, blacks experience discrimination as they are 28% more likely to receive jail time for their charges involving drugs. Those convicted with drug charges are faced with a great disadvantage to receiving employment and therefore sustainable income, which can confine them to impoverished areas. Those living in poverty often face poor living conditions, which develops a network of drug users in the community, making drug use unrestrained and therefore harder to quit. This cycle of drug abuse has become a common theme in poverty areas around urban cities. The drug crisis targets the mentally ill as an addictive, cheap, available outlet for those affected. Many times, impoverished people have little availability to the proper medication or treatment. This often leads to mental illness, specifically depression, causing them to turn to drugs. This use quickly develops into an addiction, which can make it even more difficult for users to quit. People can often be afraid of getting treatment of their addiction at the threat of facing their mental illness. This fear can also lead to other symptoms such as isolation from family and friends and an uncertainty of who they can turn to for help. The drug crisis affects the upcoming generations because of its increasing availability and more widespread media coverage. Due to the increasing use of social media such as Snapchat, Instagram, and even Facebook Messenger in the recent years, it is easier for teens and young adults to develop their social networks, thus increasing their chances of coming into contact with addictive drugs. The glorification of drugs by social media icons often exaggerates the benefit of dangerous drugs, leading to the increased use of drugs by influenced viewers. Opioids often mislead the younger generation into thinking that common party drugs are less severe than they were led to believe, which has caused an increase in accidental overdoses. This sad reality has led to many young adults, particularly college students, being addicted to opioids or other drugs that can often be hard to quit. Adderall has become a serious threat to health of college students. Since 2016, full-time students have been abusing the drug at twice the rate of those who don't attend college. As we stated, the drug crisis is the recent rapid increase in the use of prescription and non-prescription drugs in the United States, resulting in the escalation of anti-drug and rehabilitation programs. Millions of impoverished people and communities are impacted by the drug crisis through the shift in geographic and economic factors within an area. Specifically, the targeting via law enforcement, mental illness, and younger generations has led to excessive drug use, which, to the very least, leads to an insatiable addiction to dangerous substances. Over recent years, the amount of opioid-related deaths has risen to over 100 per day. The combination of drug addiction and other factors like poverty often leads to an increase in drug-related crimes and overdoses. That being said, as the severity of the drug crisis continues to grow, it is important to be well educated and aware of its current reality.